Welcome to Morning Glory Farm. Today we got special guests. We got Ryan and Morgan, and we're going to be talking about the verse of the month with them. Remember we talked about here's our verse of the month, and then we did a deep dive, and now we're talking to somebody just kind of how they've thought about the verse. But we asked Morgan and Ryan because Morgan is the owner of Jonah. So our first question really is, how did you get Jonah?
Oh, are you willing to tell us?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
We forgot to ask you that.
No, I gotta cut that out.
No.
You can just leave it in there.
Yeah, we're just
Authentic.
friends talking, having a good time. Okay.
Yeah, so when we lived in New York, we knew a lady through a friend at church who did a ministry of horses. She had a barn, a bunch of horses, and she allowed us to ride there for free as long as we did like chores and stuff. And so when we moved to Michigan, she actually gave us the horses and let us take them. My sister had a horse as well when we first moved here. But we ended up actually selling both of them when we first moved here, and then bought Jonah back, and I've had him ever since. So I've had him for quite a while now.
So who bought Jonah? Just where he was staying then?
It was a lady who lives up north.
Okay.
And then she got sick and couldn't ride him anymore, and she knew I wanted him back if she ever wanted to sell
That's
him.
cool.
So she sold him back to me.
He's got some miles under his belt.
Yeah.
It's been
How old
around.
is he again?
He's about 18. So got him when he was 8.
He's a spunky little 18-year-old though.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of energy.
Yeah, he was chasing Memphis around today.
Yeah.
It's about the first time we've ever seen them running around.
Yeah.
But if we ever want to exercise Jonah, we just take Memphis out of sight,
Oh.
and he
He'll
gallops.
run around.
He gallops all over looking for her.
And we just say, take away his girlfriend, and he's gonna freak out.
Works up quite the sweat.
Yep.
You know, it's pretty funny because he can even see us if he wasn't like in a panic because the leaves are gone, so we're just on the other side of the trees, and we're like, hey.
But he still runs
He
around.
just keeps running around. And a couple days ago, I took her out, and we came back in up here, and he was down in the corner, and I'm like calling to him, and he's looking out here. Like, and we're up, just standing there, farther than like, hey, Jonah, and I'm whistling, and then he finally saw us.
It's okay, bud.
Then he comes in running 100 miles an hour and slams on the brakes. You know. Then when you go back in, he kind of like gets a little standoffish with her, like, you left me, and I'm mad about it.
Aw.
Where'd
So
you
he'll like
go?
sniff her, and then he walks away.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of funny.
Change his mind.
But anyways, he's been fun to have her.
Yeah.
And very helpful. So it'll be interesting when little Brand shows up, how the three of them all get
How
along.
the dynamic
That will be
changes.
fun.
Because he'll probably want to run around and play. So,
Keep him company, hopefully.
Yeah.
When
Yes.
we take her out.
but anyways, our verse of the month is Psalm 19:1, as we've been talking about. So that's, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. So the one question that we have here is, when or where were you when you've seen like your best ever sunrise?
We've been to Morning Glory Farm. We think
Because-
of sunrises a lot.
Yeah, because that's what we get right up.
A lot of people have a time or a place they were where they're like, that's the best sunrise I've ever seen. Do you have anything like that?
And if you never got up that early, you can go to a sunset.
Wait, you like to sleep in?
Well, when I first heard the question, I was like, I've been to Brazil. Is there any sunrises that I've seen there that's memorable? But I couldn't really think of anything because we didn't get up super early to go look at it. So I think the one thing that came to mind is the times that I've gotten up in the morning to like go on morning walks or even driving into work. And just seeing like the sunrises at that point in those like quiet moments where I'm just going through life, going through the motions, and God still like shows his glory in the most beautiful sunrises. So that's kind of what came to mind.
It's good.
In those small moments, it's like, wow, God's still reminding me that he's
And when you're by yourself
yeah,
and you have that time, if you're just driving, just to think about
and
that.
special. Yeah. So that's what came to mind.
Awesome. Anything for you, Sam? Or
Yeah, I had the opportunity in college to go out west for a trip. And we stopped at Zion Canyon, which is in Utah. And we had a campground kind of towards the mouth of the canyon And I just remember the first morning waking up and seeing the sunrise on the red rocks, and it was just spectacular. And like here we get some great sunrises here,
Right.
but it
But
was just
there-
unlike anything that I had seen before,
Right.
and just a whole new way that I got to experience a sunrise. That was really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's like, quick, take a picture, but then it just doesn't.
It doesn't
ever
do justice.
Capture
ever.
it.
Yeah, I didn't even bother. It
No,
was,
no, it's like no,
Just take it all
it's
in.
not gonna be worth it.
no.
I think sometimes it's better just to soak it in. You remember it better than if I gotta whip my phone out and try to.
Yeah, and then you miss it by the time you're done
I
taking
think
a
it's
picture.
lost in your photos somewhere unless you're purposeful.
Or you've taken so many that Apple and their AI brilliance just puts one together for you.
That was cool.
Calls it the golden hour.
Oh yeah.
Because here, there's like 2 weeks in the summer or in the spring and the fall where I'm out there doing the chores right at sunrise. And then you just would see, if it was cloudy enough to actually get something to reflect, you just see some amazing mornings. I'd always do. Now that we work from home, we come upstairs and I'm just like, is it time? Is it time?
Anticipation.
Yes.
That's cool.
But
So our next question is from the verse, from our verse Psalm 19:1. Other than sunrises and sunsets, how else have you seen the glory of God declared?
You
I've
want to
just
do
been
this?
pondering a lot, so I just thought that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, I studied environmental biology in college, and so that it was just great because I got to go on so many different trips, and it was work, but it was also got to see a lot of cool things, and also just the learning. You can't look at a forest the same until you start to like once you've learned some of the stuff that's going on that you don't catch without having studied it. And the complexity of all of those interactions is
And the
it makes you
details.
realize that there has to be a creator behind this, and he is creative, wise, and powerful.
there's just too many pieces that have to work together to make it work.
And if one of them came along before the other, it wouldn't have worked.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that you studied that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Sam, what about you?
I mean, definitely since being married to him, he's opened my eyes to like going when we go on hikes and stuff. He'll be able to tell me, oh, what tree that is, or what plant that is, or like when significance to certain things that we see. So definitely, it's made me appreciate all those things more and see God's glory in that.
Cool.
So.
Very cool.
All right, so now we're moving out of nature. So, how from your life have you seen the work of God's hand? So, not in nature, but now in your life.
So my first thought is the way we've seen recently is through this pregnancy and just being able to see like how something so small started out as like a little blob and has grown into this baby that's like has all these different features, and it's not, my body's kind of doing the growing, but I'm the vessel that the Lord is using to grow this life and this soul, and he's given us this opportunity to raise this life, this child, to love him and serve him. So it's been a really cool experience to just see that, and then knowing that a baby, like a life comes from nothing basically, and the Lord is just creating that. So
That's
it's
awesome.
glory.
It's just
Feel
the
about the
creation of a
same.
human, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
One I always like, so I'm going to throw this out there because it's always, once you get married, it's kind of neat to hear how people met. Because especially from a Christian standpoint, you really look back and you can see the work of God's hands. Like, I married my best friend's sister. So,
Hey, Aaron.
yeah, and you look back and that kind of thing and go, huh, God made me become friends with Aaron, so eventually
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
meet my wife. so how did you guys meet?
You guys start it?
Sure. So you guys know Kyle Schaefer
Yeah.
from church. So I was in band with him at Cornerstone. Never really talked, but then we got in a New Testament class together where the professor was rather questionable in some of her ideas. And I think Kyle and I started talking because we realized both of us were just a little skeptical. And so we kind of bonded over that. And then some things happened and I needed to find a new church my last semester of college. So I thought, well, Kyle lives around here. I respect his theology, so why not give his church a try? And didn't have to try any churches after that.
That's awesome.
And then Morgan was there in the young adults group, and that had just kind of started to take off. It sounds like right around the time I got there, and we became friends. And
Yeah, the Sunday he was there was a young adults luncheon, and he came and we just happened to sit at the same table with him and Kyle and Chelsea as well. And then we just met and and then started hanging out in a group setting with the young adults, went on hikes, just got to know each other as friends, and a relationship grew from there. So thanks, Kyle.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I knew it was at church somehow, but I didn't know if somebody like set you guys up or if it just
No,
happened.
it
Just happened.
It just happened.
yeah, I think
That's
Mrs. Harmon, the Harmons, like kind
No.
of host the young adults group. I think she may have played a part in it that neither one of us knows about, but she can confirm. I just know one of the first times that we were both there, all of a sudden a chair was getting put in a very crowded part of
Well,
the
that was
table.
because I
Oh, yeah.
purposely moved over so that there would be a
Maybe it was
spot
her.
for the chair.
Maybe it was her.
The work of God's hand.
We'll have to
There
ask her.
Still, yeah. God knew ahead of time, which is
Yeah.
just crazy anyway. All right, are we on our number 4?
Yeah.
Yes. So to be able to encourage others out there to proclaim his name, which is part of our verse, proclaiming the work of his hands, through hard times and trials, what maybe have you gone through that you've been able to look back and proclaim his name through that? Getting personal
Yeah.
now.
I think just first off, to be able to be strong in a hard time and not just based on your inability to change the circumstances, but trusting that the person or that God holds those circumstances and you're in that place
The
because
trust.
of him, and to be able to be strong in that is just a great testimony. And there's been, this first year of marriage has been difficult just with a lot of health things that we've gone through, and knowing that, the health in this life it's temporary. This isn't the life we live for. And knowing that he says in James 1, trials produce character. And then Morgan was bringing up kind of when we were discussing this, Romans 8:28, how all things work together for good. And when Pastor covered that, it wasn't, maybe not our idea of good,
Right.
but those trials, he is using them for the good of his kingdom. Without an eternal perspective, trials are pointless and evil.
Yeah.
But when you have that perspective, you can look and say, how will I, one, be a testimony, and two, how will I let God shape me in this?
Yeah. And he's working it for his glory to
Yeah.
relate back to
Yeah.
the verse.
Yeah, and just hearing how you are trusting the Lord through those things is how you're proclaiming him. And you're proclaiming him just telling us that, the things were awful, like you said, but you were able to trust him during.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's only through his glory too. Just, we can't in our own strength do those things, so.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's-
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to take God's word and bury it in you. you. So when these trials come, you have something to fall back onto, and you can understand that not, oh, woe is me, but God is working through all these things. I know when I was in college, I was having a difficult time, and somebody gave me a book by Warren Wiersbe. It's called The Bumps Are What You Climb On. It's basically saying you can't climb a mountain if it's perfectly smooth. You need those bumps and those handholds to climb up on. So when we hit bumps in life, that's what we climb on. Or even Job. I like the book of Job. Sometimes it gets frustrating with all his friends, but one of the things I really liked about the book of Job is at the beginning when Satan came to God and God said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? And I've heard people say, God isn't saying, hey, go after Job, but he's really kind of saying, Satan, have you really considered my servant Job? You're going to go do all this stuff and you're going to fail because I'm going to, because he is, he loves me and I know that. And at the end of it, he will come forth as gold. And it's a very interesting concept because Job was so concerned about God and his relationship with God that God was really saying, Satan, have you really considered my servant Job? He's not who you think he is. So.
Well, I think in our small group, we gave our life stories, not our testimony, but our life stories that included spots in our life. Once we started laying it out, what we were going to share, it included, yes, I met Steve and this happened, but really it was, here was a hard time, here was a hard time, and then we got to here. And so it was like all marked of times and trials, but then how we grew in the Lord. And so like if we didn't have those, it would be so boring and we wouldn't need to trust in the Lord, like you said too.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give someone who is going through things like you've gone through this last year? Like what things have helped you get through that?
Being in a strong church has been amazing. I mean, whether it's Dr. Fig being willing to have us call him at, I think it was like 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
Oh,
super
that's
late.
awesome.
And just talk through the results of a test that we had, or Carol Trim coming up and demanding that we answer honestly about how we're doing. And
Or Melissa Wilson.
Melissa Wilson
She
coming
came
to
to the hospital.
the ER to
Yeah.
be an advocate for
Yeah.
us because we just felt like we were getting just
Yeah.
circled around
It's
the medical
confusing.
system.
Yeah.
And
And they say those words and you're like, I don't even know what you're talking
Oh.
about, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
and it's just so many other people, and God, there's a reason he tells us not to neglect to meet with each other, because one, we build each other up, but we also encourage each other to remain faithful and to keep being in the Word. And I mean, hearing preaching that's from the Word every week is so valuable because it refreshes your soul.
I always say my church is my family. And, well, because I didn't have very much family around here. Your family's around here. Now my dad's here. But, like, if I didn't have them, I feel like I wouldn't have a family, really.
Yeah.
And so people like that you can call and ask you, like, they're our family. So, yeah, I agree. Church.
Yeah, it really was amazing, just all the help and people reaching out during that time. Yeah.
Good. Anything else? Is that it?
No.
Just also gratitude of, it's easy to say, well, there's this major trial in my life, and we've had a lot go on this year, and yet there's so much to be grateful for. This time last year I was working at a grocery store. It was fine, but it wasn't going to provide for a family. And now I have a job where we have health care, can provide for a family. We got to get married, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Have a kid on the way, and it would be easy, I think, to focus on the trials, but having an eternal focus that there's more that God has planned for us here.
Gratitude's a good word.
Yeah, and I think as well what Steve mentioned too of making sure that you're in the Word so that when you're going through those trials, different verses or passages can come to mind to remind you of His faithfulness and His goodness too.
Yeah. Our verse, like, just the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of His hands. I've been thinking so much about the glory of God and the work of His hands. So how do I declare the glory of God? The heavens do, but I'm made in His image. So how do I declare, and how do I proclaim then His work, because I'm His work? So it's all relating to your story and all that you've been through. So how can you give God glory, and how can you proclaim His name through all that? It's so cool how it works together. Love that.
Yeah. So we thank you guys for coming and sharing a little bit with us. We hope that you out there are encouraged by watching this and just hearing a little bit of Ryan and Morgan's story. We're almost done with November, so it means we will have one more video where Christy and I will talk a little bit more about the verse, and then a new one coming in December. But we'd like to say thank you for all you guys that watched this whole video, and our YouTube people, please like and subscribe. Thanks for joining us for another day on Morning Glory Farm.